I'm Jim Check. You're watching Kelowna Now with me, Mayor Tom Dyas. We're here to talk about budget, and we're going to talk about the year gone by, and we're going to talk about the year
Yes.
coming up, right? Budgeting for a better tomorrow. But you're going to start off, you're going to kind of give us a recap of 2024. Hit
Yeah.
some of the highlights.
First of all, thanks, Jim. Thanks for this opportunity to kind of sit down and just have a discussion a little bit about what's taken place in 2024. Some of the initiatives maybe we'll touch upon what's coming up in 2025. But I think when knowing that I was coming into this today, I thought I'd sit back and kind of look at, okay, what were some of the major accomplishments in 2024 that myself and council kind of put forward. And when we look at public safety, the reduction of crime stats across all areas has been huge because out of our priorities, public safety is number one. The advancement of the RCMP officers, bylaw officers that we just recently did within this budget to kind of meet the demands of what the community is asking us for, which is a safer community. Our urban on-call team that we put in place, the crime reduction, the mayor's task force on crime that we looked at doing and implementing those requirements, the advocacy wins that we had around decriminalization with regards to parks and playgrounds, the Housing Accelerator Fund, the advancement of that $31.5 million that we received from the federal government, our fast track infill housing that we're looking at doing. So now from an application process to the actual development, when you receive the development permit, is down to 10 days. The legislative leadership that we had with regards to going through Bill 44, Bill 47, we were the first one in the province to look at moving that forward. We delivered on the tiny homes. We delivered 120 of them, and then we're still delivering 60 more within the community. Complex care beds, delivering the complex care beds. The infrastructure, the advancement of the infrastructure, which I know we'll speak a little bit about, but all of that advancement of the infrastructure that has come through the budget. The transportation acceleration plan that we've put in place, our parks, DeHart Park, Trustwell Park, that we've looked at doing. Grant funding success. We've acquired over about $116 million in grants that we've brought into the community. Childcare facilities, incorporating childcare facilities into our libraries. And so that the advancement of libraries into our sporting facilities, building stronger Kelowna, the advancement of the Parkinson Rec Centre, also putting in place there, which will be the Mission Sports Fields, and then also out in Rutland, and then in Glenmore. The advancement of those, the CPL, Canadian Soccer League, that they're looking at coming here into the community, the climate leadership that it ends up being. We worked with regards to climate resiliency and putting that plan forward. And interesting, building permits. We looked at advancing about 1,400 building permits this year through different developments that have come forward. But the big thing that's we're happy to see is there was about 3,600 occupancy permits. So that means that those building permits that we've advanced in the years previous to that are now getting into an occupancy. So that those are substantial. The YLW Airport, and then capital investment. So collectively, I know we want to kind of narrow down and touch upon some of those individual items, but throughout the period of this last year, there's been many, many items that we've been working on and trying to advance. And with the advancement of the budget this year, with some of the transportation projects and the parks, there's only going to be more going into next year.
That's a lot. That's a lot. And Trustwell, you talked about Trustwell Park. That was a kind of a key piece of land that you guys picked up, right?
It was a very key piece of land connecting the Mission Greenway down, and eventually there's one more property in there, but once that other property is developed, there'll be a trail that goes right down from the Greenway, right down to the waterfront. Once it gets down to the waterfront, it will then connect to the other parks along that waterfront, and we're looking at potentially building a bridge and putting a bridge over Mission Creek down there so it would connect onto Bluebird, and then also get you to Bluebird Beach, down to Sarson's Beach, all kind of along that corridor and protect it as much as possible.
We live in a beautiful city for sure. There's a live shot in behind us of the Highway 97 flowing through the city of Kelowna. It's got a little bit of a bathtub ring there with the snow right now.
It's a little busy.
Most people want to know about the money part of it. And,
Okay.
and the budget's just under $1 billion, 839 million. And then you guys ended up on a 4.34 4% increase, right? Down a
Yes.
little bit from what they were asking for, right? 4.36, I think they were asking for.
Yes.
Um, and then a lot of people don't know that not all of that comes through taxation, though, right? A small portion, 25% of that comes through taxation. The rest of it comes through user fees
202 million comes
yeah,
from taxation, up
and,
from 196 last
yeah,
year.
yeah. So I mean, as far as the city of Kelowna goes, how does it rate with municipalities that are kind of similar in size as far as the tax increases go this year?
Well, our tax increase at 4.34, as we're sitting right now, will be the second lowest. I mean, they're not finalized yet. Everybody is going through their budgets. Some of the municipalities are still going through their budgets at this point in time, and they haven't, put a final number to it. But then it is based upon all of the final tax notices that are sent out, and there may be slight adjustments to it. And usually, if there is, they come down slightly, more so than looking at increasing. But as we sit right now, ours is the second lowest in the province.
And who's lower?
I believe that's a great question. I know it's in the Lower Mainland, and I believe it is Coquitlam. I think it is.
Okay, there you go. You mentioned the Housing Accelerator Fund.
Yes.
So a promise of 31.5 million.
Yes.
How much of that have you received already? And how, with the turmoil that's going on with the federal government, do you think any of that's at risk?
Um, we have received we've delivered on 57% of what we were supposed to deliver with regards to the housing accelerator funds, our obligations from a housing standpoint.
Right.
We've received about 16 million of it at this point in time. So there is a little half or just a little over half. I did look at communicating with Minister Fraser when he was still in power about a month or so ago. And we looked at saying, is there the opportunity to look at advancing those funds to us to complete the rest of the projects because we do have them in stream. We haven't received a response back yet. Is there?
You might not get one from him.
I won't get one from him, guaranteed.
Yeah.
Potentially, his office may send us one back, but I know I won't get one from him. It's I believe that it's we're only looking at it from a positive standpoint that at some point in time we will continue to receive those funds because they've done what they've needed to do within our community and assist us in advancing housing.
One of the things, like from a newsroom perspective, one of the things that we've seen so many stories on is rental homes being built, and that seems like a really positive sign in Kelowna. But that GST break on rental housing really seemed to have spurred developers to build rental purpose
It has.
homes, right? So
Yeah.
on the other side of that, tourism, we talk a little bit about tourism, it's kind of all intermingled. Airbnb, there's a bunch of people out there saying that the Airbnb policies has hurt tourism in Kelowna. We did a story yesterday on it, and the Airbnb is obviously way down. If we get back to the 3% threshold that the NDP government has placed, will the city of Kelowna look at changing and putting back the ones that were kind of zoned for Airbnb?
A couple of things there. One is with regards to the rental housing. I mean, the GST was one particular item, but another part of it, which it helped advance the rental housing within the community, is that we looked at a program where there was relief with regards to taxes for a 10-year period if you were looking at building rental accommodation.
Yeah.
So that rental accommodation within the community really made the substantial difference and advanced those projects as any builder looks at it when they're working through the numbers to see whether the project is viable, whether it be something that they could look at advancing from a financial standpoint. That relief that they received allowed those projects to actually work. So that was a big part of it. With the number of occupancy permits, which I just had mentioned at 3,600, where that puts us in the scale of percentages with respect to short-term rentals, we know and we are tracking that those percentages of the vacancies are coming up. Do they get to the 3% and do they hold at that 3% for the length of time that it needs to make changes with regards to short-term rentals? The future will
Play out for sure.
play
Yeah.
out for sure. I do know that sometime early into the new year, staff are coming back to us with a short-term rental review on the existing properties. I believe we have 490 approximately right now residential homes that have short-term rental capabilities, and they'll be looking at, is there another tranche of principal residences that would be available to look at becoming short-term rentals again. So that will come in front of us, and we will get a look at that in the next few months. With regards to the tourism rates, and I wish I had them all broken down, and I can get them back to you, but I just received the tourism rates from Tourism Colona just last week. And the tourism that we've had come into this community and the spend within this community, there's not as much difference
Yeah, it's a
as we.
sliver. It was like
It's a
401 to 393 or
yeah,
something. That
it's
was a
just
small,
it's
small decrease.
it's a very, very small decrease. And when we look at our airport with regards to our numbers that have come in, we're at now at 2.1
Right.
million that have come in. And when we look at the months of June, July, August, and September, all the months were on par or above previous months, except for the month of July. And that was the same time that WestJet was out on a strike. So,
Yeah, there's no denying though that there's quite a few voices out there, and political voices too, saying that the Airbnb policy is hurting Kelowna. And I mean, and I did do interviews with the jobs minister, the BC jobs minister, and different things, and they're saying that's not the case. But there is some conflicting information for sure,
there
right?
is, and what I had asked some of my staff to do during the summertime is every Wednesday to go online and to book a hotel room for me,
Um,
and then also to book an Airbnb, and to see whether there was the availability for a hotel room, and if there was an availability for an Airbnb, and kind of tracked whether or not it was available. I think where the big difference came into play with Airbnbs is a house.
yeah,
So if you're
more space.
yeah, if
Yeah,
you're pulling in, two families or eight
right.
individuals or 10 individuals, the ability of having to go and now, okay, instead of having everybody within one unit, having to obtain three or four different hotel rooms, I think that was the area that continues to need to be focused
And I
on.
did interview the head of Airbnb Canada as well. He's saying that like up to 90% of the Airbnbs in Canada are just they just have one. It's not like the BCNDP. When I talk to them, they're talking about like most people have 20 and 25 of them. There seems to be just some discrepancy there as well. The bigger difference is when we have a big event, like you're talking about bringing some big events here, like Memorial Cup and all that kind of stuff. Taylor Swift, we've seen dramatic increases in hotel prices where
Yeah.
hotel that's under $200 is all of a sudden $2,500, and it really hurt the consumer, the person, especially somebody down there for a hockey tournament that weekend, like their kids playing like minor hockey. All of a sudden they're having to pay like enormous rates. And like you say, when sometimes when a family travels, it's hard to put 5 6 people in a hotel room, whereas in the Airbnb and even lifestyle like food and that, it's
And
easier, right?
it is, and I think the using the Taylor Swift effect for, I mean,
Yeah,
even communities that had Airbnbs in them,
yeah.
I think the rates on those Airbnbs went up
There would have been
substantially.
some relief though, for
Yeah,
sure, if there was more
yeah.
Airbnbs, because more people would have put something online for that weekend. Do you know what I mean? People would have just done things to get some space
I
on
know.
it.
I was up in Whistler that weekend, and there was an effect even up into Whistler.
And we're gonna feel it here at Memorial Cup. Like you're bringing some big events here, right? So
We're going to continue to bring big
yeah.
events. I
So I mean,
mean,
obviously we need that hotel slash um, alternative hotel type thing, right? And the only thing that really bothers me about the whole Airbnb thing is that the Hotel Association is the one that's funding these studies that they put forward to the BCNDP and say, look, this is why we should be doing this, right? So it seems biased to me. So I think Airbnb should be able to provide a study as well then if the Hotel Association is going to provide studies, right? I
yeah,
think that's the only fair thing to
yeah,
do.
I think we needed a little bit of a year to kind of go through a summer month and to kind of get back to where our numbers are, with respect to the visitors and the tourism and what was affected,
Right.
and then build the case based upon the information that we have, and continue to communicate with higher levels of government that make those decisions that are imposed upon municipalities.
You ran a few pillars, housing being one of them for sure, and it looks like Kelowna's making progress in housing for sure, especially in the rental side of it, right? Maybe, like we could do more in like single family homes, but we don't have the land so much. But there is excess capacity sitting right now in the condo market, right? We do have some developments that aren't sold out, so there seems to be um, like really good progress in the housing market. It's not perfect, obviously. The costs are still pretty high. Obviously, if the mortgage rates keep coming down, which it looks like they're going to
Mhm.
do, that's going to ease some pressure there as well. They're talk about tightening up immigration, which will ease some pressure there as well.
Yes.
We've had record immigration, which obviously is going to stress healthcare and stress housing.
Mhm.
One of the other pillars, crime and safety, which is a big one, right, for a lot of people, especially in the downtown core. And you guys have done some work there too. The tiny homes, obviously, that's been helpful.
It's helped.
And then, the rail trail. What's the future for the rail trail in that? Where does that stand, and what does that look like going forward?
Well, when we look at the numbers, and the number counts come in every day with regards to the individuals that are homeless within our community, and I think it's really important to know that there is a structure that we've set up where individuals who are homeless at this point in time have the ability to look at going into shelters. Once they are into shelters, then they look at having the ability to go into the tiny homes and the homes that we have set up. And as I had mentioned, we'll have 180 of those, by summer
Right.
so that transition is there. Then they're looking at from there going into other type of supportive housings. The two units that we have right now, which is a Step Place and then also Trailside. The numbers which have come out of Step Place with 60 individuals that initially went into Step Place, they have transitioned out half of them within the period of the year and then backfilled accordingly. So what we're now that that plan is in place and what we're doing, we're aware of what's the densification that happens down at Trailside, and we're discussing right now with what we look at doing that going into next year and how we accommodate those individuals and the size of it, because we want to contain it to a certain particular size, and I don't think we want it to we know where it is right now and what we would like to, what size we would like it to be in the future. So it is something that is on our minds and a concern for us to look at addressing that. And I know that we'll, take some action in addressing that, you know, into mid next year.
Ronald, can we put up the demographics of Kelowna on the screen there? No, not that one. The next one. Actually, we're going to skip that one. There you go. So, Kelowna growing fast.
165,
165, yeah, almost
907.
160. Yeah, it just keeps growing, and it's growing fast, right? Kelowna is obviously most people. I mean, if you looked at our live shot there, a lot of people want to live here. I mean, why wouldn't you want to live in Kelowna, right? 68,000,
Yeah.
close to 69,000 households. Um, that's a lot of households, and then you guys got the breakup of that. But we have what 3.2% of the BC's
BC's population.
population.
Yes.
In the summer, what do we have? Half.
Well, it definitely, I'm certain that 165 goes up over 200.
Yeah, so it definitely grows. Obviously, in the summertime, lots of people have some summer homes in here, stuff like that too, right? So it is an interesting thing for sure. What do you think? Like we have really fast growth, right? And with fast growth comes transportation issues, congestion, um, obviously demand for more housing, all that kind of stuff. Like so, and tracking forward, I know when Doug was in, we talked like the growth projected for Kelowna is dramatic, right? Like over like a quarter of a million in what is it by 2030 or something?
Yeah,
2035, maybe
yeah,
2035, something like that.
2040.
That's a lot though, right? Considering, like our main that road we're looking at, our live shot there, that's our main kind of like tributary,
Yeah.
right? That's our transportation corridor per se. Adding another, close to 30%, 40% to that obviously adds more load. I know we're densifying the downtown cores and stuff like that. And then with getting UBCO downtown, that's probably going to help some of that traffic. What is the main plan for that?
And that's that part of transportation, which was a huge item in advancing our budget. The amount of capital that we'll look at spending on transportation improvements, the Clement extension, Highway 33, so that can run parallels to Highway 97 and take
Right.
pressure off of that. We're looking at the Mission Park Transit Exchange, so we're doing that. Springfield's intersection upgrades. So when you come to Springfield and you're looking at Springfield and where you cross KLO or Benvolen, so that it ends up being
Yeah.
there's upgrades that go on that section. We're looking at Birch Road. So Birch Road is connected through not only around Parkinson, not only around the Apple Bowl, but also comes right through and connects right over to KLO. Glenmore Road upgrades, Hollywood Transit Center exchange. There's that has been a core element of what the budget is. There's two core elements to kind of the budget. One is transportation, so that we're looking at advancing. And one of the situations that you kind of mentioned is we cannot really build a ring road in Kelowna or a road which kind of goes around this city. So what we need to do is get above it and look at how can we establish better interconnectivity. So what are the roads that we can connect which will allow individuals to get from point A to point B easier when they're driving? So that's something that we're undertaking right now. The other large part of the budget is with regards to advancing parks, and the building stronger Kelowna. So those two areas are the biggest aspects of the budget which we've just implemented.
The bridge seems to be a big point of congestion always, and I know we're talking about another lane, but all the lights that you come off the bridge on this side, you've got a bunch of lights like right away
Yeah.
there. Most cities remove a lot of the lights and make you go down a ways if you want to cross over, like we have, and I think that causes a lot of that congestion.
The bridge is one thing that we've discussed with the transportation minister. I had discussions with them last year about the cantilevering, what you're speaking of, the bike lane. So the bike lane gets cantilevered out, and then there is that additional third lane. But the other item that come about was the light, which is on Abbott's,
Right.
which we've had discussions with the transportation minister about. Is there the opportunity, and will it make a difference if we look at bringing individuals across so we don't have that light, which is right there on
I
Abbott?
mean, for me, I would take out Abbott and take out Pandosy and
Yeah,
maybe even take out Richter and put it like an overchange or like a bypass or an overpass on Gordon
yeah.
and make people go out there that far, right?
Again, I mean, when you're looking at something along that lines, the capital expenditure for that is substantial. And we're, with the transit exchange that we're looking at advancing with regards to the Clement Avenue that we're doing and the
Mhm.
other roadways that we're doing through here, to look at asking the province for capital for an overpass or something along that line would be
But I mean,
substantial.
most major cities have lots of overpasses, right? We do have one out by the university now, but we don't have a lot
No.
other than that one out by the university, I
Yeah.
think, right? So as the city grows, I think overpasses might make some sense, right?
Well,
And moving people around maybe with transit and stuff like that too might help.
moving people around with transit is going to help. I mean, our Hardy Yards right now is at capacity. We only have the ability to house 111 buses, I believe 115 buses. And so when people are asking for demand for more service throughout our community, we don't have the ability of housing more buses. That's why we need to establish a new transit yard to house up to 220, and then bring the fleets in accordingly to accommodate that extra transit.
One of the big projects that you guys have put forward, the Parkinson Rec Centre, a
Yeah,
little sticky too, right? There was some pushback on that one too, but it is, and I interviewed quite a few people on it, and just like usually a lot of people make a lot of noise about it, but after it's built, they think they were the ones responsible for it because it's obviously going to be a really big feather for Kelowna, like to have something that big. Is that thing on schedule, sticking with the budget that you guys have preliminary put together, or where's that at right now?
I've had the opportunity to have a little bit of a sneak peek on what it looks like and what it would look like, and I know that's going to come, open to the public in the next few months. But they have on budget, yes, they have been working very diligently to keep it within their budget confines. And that's the benefit of looking at advancing something along that line and advancing other infrastructure projects quickly, as opposed to establishing something and saying we're going to advance it and then let it sit on the back burner for a number of years while that cost continues to increase. So it would be advanced. But I think that the thing with regards to the building stronger Kelowna, those group of projects is, yes, it was Parkinson Rec Centre without a doubt, and what's going to happen at Parkinson Rec Centre, and that will be the largest kind of center. But it's also what's happening in Mission Sports
Right.
Fields. It's
There's some
also
upgrades in
it's
other
also
areas.
what's
Yeah.
happening in Rutland. It's also what's happening out in Glenmore, and now in the recent budget that we just announced too, and there'll be plans to come out with regards to Lions Park out in Rutland. So we'll be redoing what was used to be the old health building and all of that, and creating a little bit more of an atmosphere there so that there's more activity. I mean, the more activity that we can bring into these areas creates that much safer of an environment.
I know I spoke with Doug the city manager, and he's saying that you guys have a good climate strategy, and solar will be part of that, the Parkinson Rec Centre on the
Yes.
rooftops. Because if I
Yes.
look out, especially if we look on the other side of this building here, there's a lot of concrete rooftops and not a lot of solar, right? That seems like the Okanagan a great place for solar. Is the city looking at implementing solar in more areas than other than that?
It was Parkinson Rec Center. What they had, um, the communication that they had established to look at building this is the thing that's going to make this project advance in a very timely fashion and on budget. They put not only the not only the engineers, not only the architects, but they're putting the individuals who are also do the HVAC. They're putting the individuals who collectively, all of the services that are working together, were within rooms at City Hall for almost the last 6 months, or maybe even a little bit longer. And that team looked at the design and was basically working alongside each other. So the idea of the importance of climate, programs into it, whether it be climate actions of solar or things of that nature, are all factored into
Yeah.
ways that they can do it. The one thing that happens right now with the existing building, because one of the things that as a city we can do to help climate action is look at our oldest buildings, and our oldest buildings, which ones are, the least environmentally friendly. And the existing building at Parkinson Rec, the existing structure right now, is out of the assets that we have. It's one of the ones that is, the greatest concern from a climate standpoint. So looking at upgrading that and bringing the new building to more of a net zero is, part of the plan.
AI, I know Doug Gilchrist spoke at the AI summit and talking about AI, and you guys are the city of
Yeah.
Kelowna is implementing AI in a bunch of different ways, and I think he has a pretty big vision of what AI looks like for the residents of Kelowna. You want to just touch on that a little bit?
I mean, the area where I can touch upon it, I mean, Doug has a better handle on that than I do, but the area that I can touch upon it is in the area of building and what we've seen with regards to the ability of fast tracking building permits.
Permits and that, yeah.
Where we have now, which I had spoke about, where permits are able to be done within a period of 10 days and be able to advance, that fast track infill housing program so that we're able to do that. Part of that has been the association of AI. So when an application comes in, it's actually correcting itself as the application is being built. So we're not having to go to one department to go another department. It's not going to let you proceed further in the application process until you correct it, but it also assists you in being able to correct that. So the area, I know that there'll be many areas, and one of the things that comes into play for municipalities is when we're looking at maintaining controlling labor costs. So for our labor costs, outside of unions and things of that nature, because that's a different element. But when we're looking at doing internal and labor costs, is there the ability of not letting people go, but as our community continues to grow and we need to provide more and more services, is there a way of maximizing those services to assist in expediting things like in the infill housing?
We talk about efficiencies, and I know that in the notes here that it said there's a $3 million save by just looking for efficiencies. Doge is the big name down in the United States right now. They say they're going to cut trillions of dollars. It's going to become the flavor around the world. I think people are going to ask for more government accountability, and they're going to look for more efficiency. And you're talking to that I think people want more value for the dollar because it's the tax dollars, right? It's the community that gives the money, and they just want more accountability, I think. And it's I know that municipalities are very more transparent than like the federal government and
Yeah.
stuff like that, where they kind of like like they put it in a big pot and you're just like, well, we don't know what's in that pot. It's only $12 million, $12 billion. Who knows what's in there, right? Whereas you can't hide,
No.
even a couple $100,000, right? It's tough in a municipal budget, right? Because
We
you
can't
can't
run, we
create
can't run,
money. You can't
can't run
create money
deficits.
out of
Yeah.
thin air, right? So
Yeah.
you have to work within a budget. So, um, agriculture is a big part of kind of like our history too, right? And obviously, if we look south of this building, we see a lot of agriculture, right? And we see into the bench of Southeast Kelowna and stuff like that. How do we kind of like come to terms with some of this stuff? Like we do see some land just on the other side of Springfield that could become single family homes and stuff like that. And the farmers out there trying to make hay, and which is not a very productive use of that land if you think about it, what he's producing for hay and stuff like that. Is there a way to find a way to trade land so that that can become single family homes and then some other areas get put into the LR instead?
At the moment, no. Agricultural land and agricultural
Well,
land
the LR,
reserves
yeah.
is, yeah, is
Yeah.
it basically stays the way that it is. I think what we have tried to do with agriculture is, we assisted in helping the farmers market find a new home,
Yeah.
which, they have around here. We're looking at water systems that we've established for farmers so that
Yeah.
if all of a sudden their water rates kind of, spike,
Yeah.
we're speaking to them right away. We looked at the ability to put other residents on so they can have rentals. But the idea of taking agricultural land and looking at putting it into housing or other type of development, no, not that I'm aware of at all at
It's
this time.
happened in Kelowna. Marshall Feedlots is one example for sure.
Yeah.
Where the superstore was, that was ALR land as well. So there are people that have been successful in pulling land out of the ALR when it's proven that the case is better for a better use of that land.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we looked at doing it with regards to the airport had done it on, in a section with regards to their expansion.
Right.
The transit yard had done it with an area with regard to that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, but is there a direct impact with the areas that you had mentioned and looking at bringing them into housing?
Yeah.
Not at this particular point in time.
And that would be a provincial thing too, because they're the ones that administer that for
It,
sure.
it is
I
it
do
is it
understand
is
that as
strictly
well. Yeah.
it is strictly provincial. I mean,
Yeah.
we would
You just have
be
to make the case, right? If
yeah.
that's the
We would have
the
to,
direction, right?
anybody would have to look at applying to them and then apply to them and saying, what is there the opportunity of pulling this out or trading that land?
There was the development that Troika was working on by the garbage dump there, that hill there that was turned down. If we're trying to promote more housing, is that something that should be looked at again?
No.
Just a question. And then,
Just an answer.
and then the other one that seems to be a bit contentious for a lot of people is the Colona Springs golf course.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like a lot of people pushing for the city to buy that property.
Well, I mean, and I heard, that very clear. It was, as individuals, may or may not know, it was recreational. Through an OCP, previous to my time, it changed into industrial.
Yeah.
This council changed it back to recreational. We looked at having a discussion with the owner to see whether they would entertain the idea of selling it. There's a different valuation when you value it as recreational as opposed to industrial, and there's a delta in between the two. And I don't think anybody would have been happy with the city looking at spending that difference in those amounts. So I don't know where it'll go in the future. It's still at this particular point in time zoned recreational. But we did hear everybody saying, "Is there an opportunity?" And we did explore it.
I mean, it's a beautiful golf course. I've golfed there many, many times, but Kelowna also has many, many golf courses, right? Like, I mean, there's no shortage of golf courses in this valley for
I
sure.
was going to jokingly say that it ends up being, your golf swing has improved substantially in the last little while. Some of those videos I've seen.
There you go.
It's,
Um, the economy, another big component for sure in people's like why they want to live in this area. We've attracted a lot of some tech companies and stuff like that.
yeah.
How do we continue to attract? Because we are facing some headwinds with what some of the policies are. The new capital gains thing for some companies. Like why would they set up shop here versus Colorado or something? You know what I mean? Because Denver is kind of like a similar type environment to what we have here, a little bigger. So how do we put Kelowna into the front of people's lists, I guess?
Okay, a couple of things there. One is recently I was just in Ottawa because we were looking at advancing on the east sides of the airport. The west sides of the airport have substantial commercial on it. The east sides do not. And we were looking at obtaining infrastructure funding so we can take services over to the east side and look at advancing there. We did have some companies from outside of Canada that were looking at and are still considering potentially coming here and establishing business here. So we're, from an economic standpoint, that is something that's really important to us to continue to have those discussions. Sam at the airport and everyone else has been great in assisting us with those discussions. The other part of it, which is key, is the programs that we're bringing and the events that we're bringing. we collectively as a city never aggressively, to the same extent as now, went after events. With the Briar coming into town, with the CCMAs, with the Memorial Cup, and all of those items that advanced, and the spending that advanced through this recent budget allows us to look at advancing on acquiring more of that. That has a huge economic impact. We spoke of Taylor Swift, and you look at what that does. But when we, to a community, but when we add up the Briar CCMAs and also the Memorial Cup, it's probably 60 or more $1 million of economic impact. And there's a couple of other ones that we're going at. So from an economic standpoint, it's those items. The Kelowna Community Theatre, which just went through, and we just looked at that. The economic impact of bringing more events to that theater within the community. Into the new year, we're going to look at other opportunities or other ways of pulling more people into this community, because we have an absolutely beautiful offering. The community is beautiful. How can we pull people here, not only and be able to kind of provide clean jobs or good jobs for our residents, but also use to our advantage what we have when people want to come and spend time in this community?
One of the advantages we have right now, we have a low dollar, which is great for exporters.
Yes.
So great for KF Airspace when they're paying in Canadian dollars and selling in US dollars. Obviously, that is an advantage that we have in Canada right now. Not a great advantage for the consumer that goes to the store and buys blueberries and blackberries and that kind of stuff, but definitely good for some companies that are exporting, right? And like if we can bring more industry, I guess, in here. How how do we attract it, and how are you getting the message out about Kelowna? Like, are you, like you said, you were in Ottawa. How are you getting the message out? When you see in the United States, they just put out a thing that said, if you have $1 billion to invest in the United States, we're going to fast track you. Your taxation is going to be 15%. How do we compete in this economy?
Well, if we're looking at the area of bringing air tech type of businesses here, Sam sits on a national board. Through that national board, there are discussions that come to light, and that's how these discussions started. So by having individuals in key positions to look at, are there anybody looking at advancing this area, and what are some of the areas? Is it what type of air travel can we look at bringing here? So those are in that area. That's one of the things that's happening. Also with the university here, what we've seen with regards to the number of companies that want to come because of the engineer students and everything else that come out of the universities, that's put us on the map. And I know the universities and the colleges are also advocating on behalf of this city. And from the recreation and tourism side, in all areas, kind of communicating with events and event planning, that was the idea of putting together that team, so that we're sending messages out to them to let them know the facilities that we have available, and that we're open to work with them to bring a successful event to this community.
Lifestyle wise and housing and that, we seem to be making some headway, parks for sure and all that. But the one thing that is troubling a lot of people in British Columbia is healthcare. And I know that's not under your kind of like management, but we're seeing it get worse and worse. And I've done so many stories on and interviewed the mayor and Oliver, 40 closures in the ER department. And this is not just Oliver, it's all over British Columbia. Small departments in our hospital is obviously over capacity. How do we have an aging population as well. How do we get more healthcare to meet some of our population growth here?
Like you said, I mean, it's not under
No, I get it, but I mean, obviously it's your
municipal man.
you have to campaign for it, I guess, or fight for it.
Well, we do. I mean, and really, when we're looking at when we a lot of the work that we have to do around healthcare, when we're looking at advocating for it, is in the area of mental health and addictions.
Yeah.
So continually, we're advocating for mental health and addiction. So if and I'll touch upon a couple of things. One is Trailside. The housing units that we opened up, the 60 housing units that we opened up along the highway. That is for a population 55 and over. So it's for a population that has accessibility issues, and it's also for a population that was either living within shelters or within the hospital. A lot of the services now for those individuals, the interior health will go directly to them. So we assisted to a certain degree individuals who were seniors who needed that healthcare issue by establishing that. The mental health and addictions issue, which is a huge issue for us when we're looking at establishing complex care beds. But now, one of the other items that we were successful, myself and a number of mayors stood down in Vancouver and looked for it, was complex mandatory care. So, what we will see, and we're continuing to advocate for the province for, is help us establish that complex mandatory care under Interior Health so that those individuals who have these addictions and are who on our street who need this help are we're able to help them, but we're able to help them with an established program for them to truly get better, not to, for them to find a way to get off the hamster wheel of just continually, having that addiction and, find a better place in life. And if we can do that with assisting them through advocating for that complex mandatory care, those are the health avenues that we can truly help with. The other area is, the future development of the hospital and what it needs, when it looks at advancing. Is it going to be able to maintain its existence just there, or does it need to expand? And if it needs to expand, how does it expand? Does it become potentially part of the university, and then there's discussions along those lines?
Because they built that big administration building
Yeah.
downtown, and it seems like Interior Health has they've been bloating administration, and even their communications department is like, there's a lot of people working there, but you can't get an answer lots of times, right? For us, what I mean, you reach out and they just really just point you to Victoria. But I mean, then why are we having communications people here, right? Why are we paying 14 people? It doesn't make sense sometimes. So obviously that's a big concern for British Columbians. Um, Kelowna has a couple of really cool things. We didn't talk about the airport too much, but
We should.
yeah, we should. The airport is one of our crown jewels per se.
100%.
It's one of their busiest. Like we're in the top 10 now in Canada. I don't know,
We're
five or
we're ninth.
ninth. Yeah, so we're in the top 10.
And it's kind of sitting like this, but we have been 10th for a long time, and now we're sitting where we're getting to 9. It will have 220,000 people through it this month of December. We're getting over 2.1 million individuals to it. The new terminal buildings, the new hotel, the new park.
That area out there is just
Yeah.
blown up, right? I mean, it's just incredible the amount of development out there. When you think back 8 years, there was not much out there, right?
And the work, I mean, the work that it has, the jobs that it has put individuals in, and the employment that it has offered to individuals out there, and the advancement of it. When it went through COVID, there was obviously a substantial drop, and there was great uncertainty of where those numbers would come back up. And that's why a lot of the projects were put on hold at that point in time. But now with that new terminal building and that 5-star hotel that's going out there, and also the Parkade.
I looked at the numbers in like all the management staff, and it seems like the airport seems to have a substantial jump from 2023 to 2025, from like 20 management positions to 29 management positions. Is there a reason why that area has grown more in management than some of the other sectors?
You probably know, but I have the honor of chairing the airport advisory committee, and and looking at discussing that with Sam a little bit. They had an HR plan going into 2018 and 2019 that, based upon the volume levels of individuals and their expansion that they were going to do through that period of time, what their employment levels would look like. Due to COVID and what happened, and the airport basically almost shutting down, they were reducing the number of individuals that they were advancing, not knowing if we would get back up to the levels of over 2 million visitors and such. It's happened so rapidly with regards to the expansion and the services that are there. They're playing catch up. Okay. They're playing a little bit of catch up from where they were. What stalled them at that point in time, and just the advancement of, again, people wanting to come to this community. For
Well, we do have world-class ski hill.
Yep.
We have a world-class golf courses.
Yep.
Some world-class wineries, and we're bringing in some major events. I mean, Kelowna is an attraction just by looking out the window, and we have a lake that is like amazingly beautiful, right? Like, I mean, it's not much that you could say about that. That lake is just.
Well, I think for the longest time, it was. I think people recognized that it was a secret. It was probably a gem in Canada, or the gem of Canada. that was a secret for a lot of individuals, and that secret is kind of leaking out a little bit. And the people who live here want to stay here. They want to continue to be part of this community, and other individuals who are learning about it also want to be here. So that's putting forward the
I don't want to
growth.
keep you too long. We'll stay under an hour. We got about 7 minutes left.
It's been an hour.
See, it goes by fast. You've been in what, 2 years now?
2 years.
2 years.
2 years and a month or so.
Anything you'd like back? A do over? Anything? Is there anything that? Because it seems like it's a pretty functional group that you guys
Yeah. No, no. I
have.
mean, I can. The first year was such a steep curve.
Yeah.
That first year was such a steep curve to kind of get an understanding on how everything was working and what we needed to advance. But working alongside council and us establishing our strategic plan and building that strategic plan. And then that strategic plan, then advancing through senior leadership team to come up with plans for that. Then from there, it goes into budget. So, there is a very set process when we're looking at dealing with budgets. It's not like it's one day on December 5th and all of a sudden we get a booklet. It's presented to us numerous times throughout the year. I think we had 4 touch-in points last year with regards to the priorities that we established and how leadership was going to look at advancing those priorities, the infrastructure that's being done, the parks that's being done, the community, a simple little thing like Prade with a Purpose.
I was going to get to that Prade, which to me it looks amazing, great family event, but obviously there's some flack that comes out of it too, right? But you can't please everybody. But how do you as the mayor and city council deal with some of the people that are going to complain about everything?
There's 165,000 or 100,
Yeah,
166,000
right.
people in this room. I mean, sometimes it's tough to put 10 people around a table and
Yeah.
get total agreement from everybody within there. I mean, so it's something that we do at certain times isn't going to be right for, somebody.
Everybody.
It isn't going to be right for everybody. And we can truly appreciate that. And what we can do is listen and hear. And if we're able to adapt and change what we're doing, that's absolutely fine. But, when we were voted in, we were voted in to look for the interest of the 165,000 people to the best of our ability. And that's what we're
Yeah,
trying
we
to do.
live streamed that event, which is a great event, and like, we were surprised with the amount of complaints that came in to us even about how like it's an inconvenience and it's hurting business. And I'm just like, you serious? Like it's hurting business downtown? Like it just brought like most of Kelowna downtown. I mean, it was
I never, and you know what?
yeah,
Walking those streets and walking up Bernard Avenue and then down Lawrence and seeing the face of the children
yeah.
and the smile and the excitement that they did, we're certainly we're probably upset a few hundred people in the process, but we made thousands and thousands smile. So
I don't know. I think it's great. Anything else you want to touch on?
well, I appreciate the opportunity. I
Yeah.
appreciate kind of the opportunity to go through. I mean, as my mind kind of runs back, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of other things that we have done throughout the
Yeah.
year that I haven't touched upon, but we're
Well, you're halfway through, right? You're halfway through your first term. I'm sure you're going to run again. I don't know if you want to say it now, but but you're halfway through your first term though.
yes,
So you've kind of got your feet on the ground and you know what's going on. So
yeah,
now, the Memorial Cup, you can talk about that for a little bit. Getting the Mem Cup after losing it kind of to COVID because we had it
yeah.
and losing it to COVID, getting it back again, I think is a great another feather in the cap for City of Kelowna.
It's a huge feather in the cap, and the advancement of I've roughly seen the new clock which is going in. I mean, for just for the citizens of Kelowna to be able to go to events and go to a Rockets game and see, what the new structure will look like will be unbelievable. So huge feather. I mean, without a doubt. I mean, it's no
Because you
secret.
chaired that committee last time.
I
You were the
chaired it.
chair of the committee
I chaired the
that
bid.
brought that
I
Mem
chaired
Cup
the
in.
bid committee, and then I chaired the host committee on both. So, but we've got some good chairs now, and David Rush and Steve Thompson. So I know they're going to carry it through and do a great job.
I'm going to ask for this one final question.
Okay.
When you were chamber president for a while, and I know Nikki talks about the loss because she was chamber president for a while. One of the things missing in Kelowna is a convention center. Is that where the old Kelowna Community Theater or the current one goes? And maybe somewhere in there? Is there a plan for a convention center? Because that's what's missing in Kelowna. Just asking.
You know what? I think you will, I think it's something that potentially the Chamber of Commerce looked at it back in 2007 and 2008, and I was on the committee when they did their first, feasibility study on it. And it's something that has had discussion before. When we look at bringing more and more events and more people to this community, is it something that should be potentially examined? We just went through a process where we looked at all the opportunity with the Kelowna Community Theatre. I think it should be a discussion, and I believe that I believe that there'll be a discussion on it coming up in the next little while, to see whether it's something that the city can accommodate, and if it's something, if from an economic standpoint, which is our seventh priority as council, if there is an economic benefit to the community, especially during shoulder seasons, because we really don't need it during the July, August, those months. No. But if we can do something through shoulder seasons, like the majority of the events that we have, and bring economic strength to this community and help the restaurants and all the rest of those. Yeah, it's I think
even out the kind of like business flow.
Yeah, I think it's something that we truly need to take a look at.
So that the community theater will be built somewhere else, so that leaves that property there. And then is there progress in the old police station there? Is that a go? Or is that kind of like locked up still, or
it's just in discussions?
Yeah, because I mean that'd make a great convention center. That big piece right there. Just putting it out there. There's my pitch. I think Kelowna needs one. I mean, especially when we're at 250,000, 300,000 and stuff like that. I mean, it's going to get. I mean, I wouldn't say tomorrow.
No way. I'm not gonna disagree with you. And I believe that it is something that there should be some consideration. There should be some looking at it, and I think you'll find that it may be some discussion that comes up early into the new year.
My wife made me ask that question.
She did.
We do thank you for your time, Tom. It's been great. And obviously an annual checkup is great, but we'll try to get you in a little more often too, right? So,
yeah, no, I appreciate it. And just if I get a quick moment and an opportunity just to individuals to wish them and themselves and their families the best of the holiday season, a Merry Christmas, and thank you so much for everything that everyone does for the community. Truly appreciate it. There's a lot of just great individuals. Perfect example is Prade with a Purpose, but everything else that they, Memorial Cup, all of those other events that kind of come into play. Just thank you for for everybody's involvement.
And there you go. If we go back to our headline, a budget for a better tomorrow, and I think from what we heard, I think a lot of those things are for a better tomorrow, and I do believe that the Kelowna is an enviable place to live for sure, and it is a beautiful place, and I think we all have a duty to kind of make it better.
Agreed.
With that said, we do thank you for watching Kelowna Now.
The news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent. News you can trust.